Hello. Yes, you are welcome to the next lesson on curriculum models. Let me simply put, what are the various curriculum formats? How curriculums can be developed. A curriculum can be developed. A curriculum or curricula is developed. Okay. So let's look at it. When we talk of curriculum model, we are looking at a representation of reality which is often depicted in diagrammatic form. So basically, we are looking at what goes into curriculum design. And then there are several models that have been proposed to be followed to develop curriculum. Okay. Alright, so we have some three basic types. We have the rational or objectives model, we have the cyclical models, and then the dynamic or interaction models. Okay, so let's jump straight into it. The rational objective model. This has two models. We are going to study two models under it. We are going to study Tyler and we're going to study Taba. Okay, so that is Tyler. Now, Tyler's model is often referred to as objective model because it starts with objectives. You need to get your objectives first, and everything depends on your objectives. For Tyler's model, it is objective and everything, so you select your objective and everything depends on the objective. So it is your objectives that will determine what activities to choose, what learning experiences, the right learning experiences to select, and the content to choose. Okay, so Tyler stated his curriculum rationale in terms of 4 major questions which must be answered. So when you are using Tyler's model, you must answer 4 questions. One is, what educational purposes should the school seek to attain? So if you are using Tyler's model, you must ask yourself, what is the purpose of schooling? So what should the school do? What, in the end, how should the school affect an individual's life? So if you know what the school should do, so in the case in Ghana, I think what we want to do, we want to make student digital literate. So it means when it comes to technology, they are not green. So if that is the purpose of schooling, and then that would inform you the educational experiences that can be provided to attain that purpose. So if you want to achieve digital literacy, you don't use only books, then you must open up for digital technologies, information technology tools. So as you use them, then you can achieve that purpose. Now, so Tyler says that so knowing your purpose or your objectives, you must know your objectives. You must also know, based on your purpose, what learning experiences you can select. Now, how can these experiences be effectively organized? If you know that you need to teach these students using digital technologies, field trips, virtual trips, virtual museum, visiting virtual museums, then you need to know how are these things going to be organized. How are we going to organize the learning experiences? And then the fourth question is, how can we determine whether these purposes are being attained? So when you organize your learning experiences to help learners learn, then you now ask yourself, have I achieved my purpose? So these are questions Tyler asks. So let's look at Tyler's model. First, you should state objectives. Then you select the learning experiences. So teacher-learner activities. Now, how is the learning experiences going to be organized? How are you going to organize your activities to achieve the purpose? And then evaluating the curriculum. So you state your objectives, you select the experiences, you organize it, and then after everything, you now ask yourself whether you have been able to achieve the objective. Okay. Let's get a little deeper. Okay, so in Tyler's, we are looking at some principles in here. One is defining appropriate learning objectives. Now, if you want to state objectives, the objective must look at what must focus on the learner. The objective must be child-centered. So you must know what the interest of the child is. You must also know what problems the child encounters. And you must also know what purpose the child has in mind. So, before you state your objectives, you must know the child, the problems he goes through, and what he wants to achieve. Or what do you think the child should be able to achieve before you state your objectives? Okay. Now, if you want to select useful learning experiences, what do you do? Learning experiences involve the methods employed in the classroom to bring a desirable change in the student behavior. So we are looking at, when you talk about the learning experience, we are looking at the methods, teaching methods you employ in the classroom. So based on your objective, you select your methods. So example, like a content like types of mountains. You want to teach type of mountains. A learning experience can be a visit to the mountains, picture of mountains, or read about the types of mountains. So that is the learning experience. Now let's look at organizing learning experience. So how do we manage our methods of teaching in the classroom so that the child can learn? One, okay, so in organizing the learning experiences, that is your content and the methodology. You are now looking at how to organize it in such a way that students can learn well. let's look at these three criteria. One is continuity, sequence, and integration. So you must have content continuity. That is repetition of the content at successive levels. Spiral curriculum. So you teach in class 1 numbers or set. You teach the same set in class 2 with increasing difficulty. You teach the same set. So you repeat the content, because you cannot teach all about set to class 1 kids. So you repeat the content. And then sequencing. Now, when you are trying to get your content, the sequencing involves trying to know what student can do commensurate to their development. So you are looking at teaching set from KG to GHS. So what can those in KG do in set? So that you don't give what KG is supposed to do to P4 and give that of P4 to KG. That wouldn't help. That wouldn't help. So there must be that sequence, and that should show increasing level of difficulty. Okay. Now integration. Integration, this means that student learning experiences must help students transfer learning in other sectors. So we must teach in such a way that students can transfer whatever they learn in mathematics into English, into science, and to other areas. So the content must be structured in that way so that students can, after learning, I think some time ago there was a video, somebody was making fun, was having fun. He said, the pie that we learned in school, what are we using it for? Pi no cry. I said, what are we using pi r squared? What are you using it for? Meanwhile, pi r squared has practical use. So we must teach in such a we must teach and structure our content in such a way that they will have some practical benefit. Okay, so the first step is to evaluate the curriculum. So Tyler is saying that state your objectives, select your methods, organize the content and the methods, and now evaluate it. After some time, ask yourself whether you are achieving your objective. So if you are not achieving your objectives, then you need to revise it. Okay. Now, Tyler's model has been criticized. That is, or in effect, let's say the advantage, the disadvantages. Okay, they believe that narrow interpreted objectives. You see, when you are using Tyler's model, you are looking at behavioral objectives, and there are few acceptable verbs. You cannot say student will be able to know. It's not accepted. So there are some words that are accepted. So it's narrow. And then it's difficult and time consuming constructing behavioral objectives. It's very difficult. It's very difficult constructing behavioral objects before you go on to do the other things. Then curriculum, if you develop using Tyler's model, they say that curriculum is restricted to a range of student skills and knowledge. So, if you are developing curriculum in this way, you are only going to look at certain skills students need to know. It doesn't give room for students to explore much. And then the model is too simplistic and mechanistic. You see, the model is straight. It's a straight line, so it's not that rigid, it's not flexible. You cannot go back. Once you select the objectives and you select learning experiences and you feel there's a problem, you cannot go back to the objectives to change it and come back. No. You need to go on, finish before you evaluate and then come back to the objectives again. And then there is also a temptation to teach only what we can evaluate. So, if everything depends on the evaluation, then I'll teach what I can evaluate. And then when the general evaluation is done, you see that I'm teaching. Okay. Now, there's also another criticism that it doesn't allow for critical thinking, problem solving, and value acquiring processes. Because how would you state students will be able to critically think? How would you be able to state critical thinking in behavioral terms? So a student will be able to critically think. And somebody will ask you, how do you know students are critically thinking? So that is one criticism. Okay. So Taba was a student of Tyler and tried to improve on Tyler's model. So this is Hilda Taba. This is Hilda Taba. Okay, so this is her model. You see, she, for Tyler, is saying that before you state your objectives, you must look at the needs of the learner, you must look at the problems he faces, the student's interest. Okay, so it's embedded in the statement of objectives, but Taba felt that should be a different thing. So she came out with diagnosis of need. So you need to diagnose the need. You need to have a feasibility state, not feasibility as such, but then you need to know the problems on the ground and the need for a new curriculum. So that I think in your project I asked you to that part that I said you should do a situational analysis of the course. You must diagnose the need for the course you want to bring up. So that's diagnosis of need. So when you diagnose the need, when you do a situational analysis, you look at the problem, and now you can now formulate your objectives. After formulating your objective, you select the content. You see, the earlier one, it was not explicit. So Taba is saying that let's make it explicit. After your objective, select your content first. Then organization of the content. That is your methodology. Then organization, how the content is going to be organized, and then you select your methods, the learning experiences, and then you organize the learning experience or the learner activities, and then you determine what to evaluate and the ways and means of doing it. So he used that of Tyler but expanded it to be 7. Okay. So that is that of the Taba. So you do an analysis to know the problem, then you formulate the objectives. So what are the objectives of this curriculum? So for your course, CPD course you are developing, you need to have an objectives. You need to have goals and then the objectives. So the goals will be the broader objectives. So your goals, you formulate your objectives and then you select your content. And then after selecting your content, you now look at how you're going to organize your content. That is looking at the continuity, the integration, and then the sequence. So you should the learner should not be bombarded with everything at once. So the one topic must flow through. That topic must flow through with increasing difficulty. Okay. So you select the learning experiences, the activities you are going to use, and then how are you going to use those activities in the classroom. All these must come, and then you evaluate. Okay. So this is the Taba's model. So that is also linear. Okay, let's look at the cyclic model. Because the two were linear, there were some criticisms. No, this thing is too linear, it's too simplistic. And you can, when you formulate your objectives and you have a challenge, you cannot go back. Until you end, you cannot go back. Okay, so that gave the idea of cyclic. Okay, so the cyclic believes that those who believe in this cyclic model or cyclic model of developing curriculum believe that curriculum design is a continuous process. So your objectives, you select your learning experience, you select everything, you evaluate. When you evaluate and you have a challenge, you go back to your objectives and all that. That is what the cyclic is about. So let's look at so let's look at that of Hilda. And then he extended that of Tyler and Taba. So he suggested 5 interrelated phases. So let's go straight into it and look at it. So he believes that you must first get your aims. So the aim to this model is the overall objective. At the end, what do you want the student to have? So at the national level, you have the aims. And then you break the aims into the goals. So you have, if you want the student to be digital literate, okay. So what can they do? What do you want them to be able to do to show that they are digital literate? So they should be able to use digital technologies. So that is a goal. Now, using digital technology is also broad. So students should be able to effectively, students should be able to send an email. That is an objective. So from being digital literate, you are now should be able to send email. So that becomes a specific objective. Okay. Now, when you have all these, then you select your learning experiences, your methods. You select your methods and how you want to teach it. And then you select your content. You select your content. Okay. And now he also believed that no, when you select your method and the content, then you should be able to blend the two. There should be a stage where you are now going to map your methods to your content. So if you are talking about using filters, what content can be used? Or what content can you use filter to teach? So that is the stage of organization and integration of learning experiences and content. And then you do evaluation. So when you finish with the evaluation and you have a challenge, you go back to your aims and objectives. That is Wheeler's model, or that is the cyclic model. Now Nicholls and Nicholls also came out with their model that is also cyclic. Theirs, they also took a cue from Taba, so they have situational analysis instead of diagnosis of need. So you analyze the situation. You analyze the situational analysis. So you analyze the situation. When you are doing situational analysis, you can do interviews. You can interview the various stakeholders. So students, teachers, you can interview policy makers, opinion leaders, to know what the whole problem is and how there can be a change using curriculum. Now you select, after the situational analysis, you select your objectives, then selection and organization of content. So he believes that when you select the content, you organize it, you sequence it, you integrate it, you sequence, integration, and then you sequence it, you integrate it, and then what do you call it? A continuity. So sequence, integration, and continuity. Okay, so you organize it as such. As when you select, as you are selecting, you are breaking it down into the smaller unit. Okay. Now you also select your methods. You see, when we talk about learning experiences, it gives a vague meaning. So he believes that we must give a simpler term. So selection, organization of methods. Okay. And then evaluation. So you evaluate and then go back. If you have any challenge, so you go through the situational analysis, select your objectives, select your content and organize it. You select your methods, and then after everything you do evaluation. If you find any challenge, you go back to situational analysis. Maybe it's the situational analysis that you didn't do well. Okay, so let's now go to the strength. So the strength of the cyclical model is the situational analysis. You are able to analyze to see what the problem is before starting anything. And also it is flexible. The model is flexible, less rigid, and it's relevant. Okay. Now the weakness is also the same logical. It's also logical. That is, it's sequential from one stage to the other. You cannot skip a stage. Although you come back to the first point, you still have to go through the logical and sequential model. Just as Taba and Tyler's are. Okay, the fundamental problem in utilizing this is the time required to undertake effective situational analysis. So, undertaking the analysis is also a problem which people feel is a weakness. Then, just as it's not different from the objective model. Okay, now here comes the dynamic or the interactive one. Okay, so with this one, the idea is that as teachers, we are not free to teach any topic we choose. Rather, we are guided by the local institutional standards that specify what students should know and be able to do. So, you don't just choose anything, but you look at the national standard, what the nation demands, what the nation demands. Okay, these standards serve as the framework. So, based on something like, so Ghana would have had a learning policy, and then out of that, we develop based on the policy. Okay, so now we have the Common Core program. We also have the primary years program, then the secondary. So when you have that bigger framework, national curriculum framework, then you can now tease your content out of the framework. So here we are shifting from focus from teaching to learning. So it means if your students are not learning, you are not teaching in the standard-based curriculum. So that is what we have now. Ghana has the standard-based curriculum. Now we are focusing on learning. So in the end, what will your student be able to do? That is why the teacher is giving some form of flexibility. So the curriculum is used as a means to achieve a means to the end. So you are using the curriculum to achieve what you want to achieve. Okay. So the dynamic model works this way. The dynamic model was, we have objectives, we have evaluation, organizing learning experiences, but they interact. So from the objective, you can go to the From the objective, you can go to the select your learning experiences. Evaluation. After evaluation, you can go to look at your objectives. From the evaluation, you can go to look at your learning experience, that is your methods. From the learning methods, you can go to look at the learning experiences. This is organization of the. You can also go to look at the method, the content. Then there is a direct link relationship between the content and evaluation. So your evaluation should evaluate the content, should also evaluate the learning experience, should also evaluate the objectives. Now there should be a link also between the objectives and the learning organization of the learning experiences. So that is how the interactive model is. And there is also another one. You have the situation analysis, you formulate your goal, you build a program, and then interpretation and implementation. So that is where you do your trainings and all that. And then you come back to monitor, feedback, and then you assess. And then if you need to reconstruct it, you go back to situational analysis. Okay. So let's look at the strength. The strength is that you can begin with any of the elements. So you can start from evaluation. You can write your evaluation before you come to your objectives. The model allows the curriculum developer to change the order of the planning, and it is also flexible. So you can decide what to teach or what to put in the curriculum first. Then the weakness is that the model does not necessarily specify objectives. So you may have a problem with the objectives because you can start anywhere. You don't necessarily specify objectives. And then the model offers so little direction. So if you're a novice, you can get confused. A novice can get, you wouldn't know where to start. Unlike that of Taba, Tyler, Nicholls, Hilda, where you know where to start. This one, you may not know where to start. Then it can also, the curriculum will need a lot of time to develop, to determine the beginning. So where to begin, you need time. Because if you are developing with others, there may be a debate as to what to do first. It's not easy. You can have a whole debate for about 3 hours without solution. Then you need to break, go and rest, and then come back again. Okay. So this is curriculum models. So we have discussed the objective model, that is by Taba and Tyler, the cyclic model, Hilda, Nicholls, and Nicholls, then the dynamic one, and the dynamic interactive one. Okay. And we have also discussed their weaknesses and their strength. So this is the assignment, and then so I've changed the date to 20th July. Thank you.